Hey there everyone, Mazrock here, and today we're going to be going over the Blood Death Knight. Maybe you're tired of playing the Vengeance Demon Hunter. Maybe you're tired of everyone telling you to play a Vengeance Demon Hunter and you want to carve your own path as a tank. BDK might be for you. It is a little bit of an outlier when it comes to tanking because its main form of damage mitigation is healing yourself up through the form of death strikes. So your health as a tank is going to ping pong a lot more than, let's say, other sorts of tanks, because your main form of damage mitigation is live, death strike through it. There are some forms of mitigation that you do get. So of course you get Icebound Fortitude, which grants you a stun and an immunity to stun, and you take 30% less damage for 8 seconds. You also have Rune Tap, reduces all damage taken by 20% for 4 seconds. Utilizing these intelligently is going to be a big boon to you as a DK. So perhaps right when you're about to pull the pack and you're at your most dangerous, because you're in your most danger phase of you being hurt a lot, not being able to do things right, opening up with a Rune Tap before you kind of really get the pull going is going to mitigate just enough damage, especially once you get up to higher keys, until you can build up your runic power, and then you can really get that flow starting. So those are your two kind of main forms, but as well you do have Dancing Rune Weapon. So this is both an offensive and a defensive cooldown. It summons a rune weapon for 11 seconds that mirrors your melee attacks and bolsters your defensives, and while active gives you 40% parry chance. So this is really, really good in melee scenarios to deal with a lot of the auto attacks and things like that, which surprisingly can chonk you for a lot more than what you may think. And then of course you have magic damage mitigation in the form of Anti-Magic Shell. So surrounds you in an Anti-Magic Shell for 5 seconds, absorbing up to 20k, now this is we're at level 60, and preventing the application of harmful magic effects. This is a really, really good ability on 1 minute cooldown, and you can talent into reducing it and decreasing the cooldown and increasing the absorption. And it is a fantastic damage immunity, which should be used against packs or mobs that deal heavy magic damage. This gets a lot of use in Necrotic Wake for me, for example. There are a lot of Necrobolt spammers, and this is a good way to just simply mitigate a lot of that damage without having to worry about it. And of course you have one of the best raid utilities in the game right now with the Anti-Magic Zone, which places an Anti-Magic Zone on the ground for X amount of seconds and reduces all spell damage taken by party or raid members by 20%. This is definitely in the top tier of damage mitigation and raid cooldowns, and as well is really, really good in Mythic Plus, especially on Pride packs. You literally drop that on your Pride, and you're just helping your healer a ton going through it. It has a lot of use. With Blood, it's kind of a specialty class where it's really good at just simply negating a lot of things. Anti-Magic Shell can negate a lot of magic tank busters and things like that. With a simple press of a button, problem solved. Movement. So in the last boss of Theater of Pain, where she's sucking you into the grasp, you just Death's Advance, you negate it. It's really good at dealing with a lot of things simply by negating the mechanics. For example, as well, Icebound Fortitude, granting immunity to stuns. This will also get you out of a stun. So if you are in trouble, you are stunned, and you need to be out of it immediately, Icebound Fortitude, gain some damage reduction, you're back on your way. So this is kind of the approach that I've taken with playing Blood, and is finding out all of the little things that you can negate as a BDK, and it makes it a lot of fun. It really, really does, and I find BDK to be one of the more fun tank specs to play. My only gripe with it right now, and this has been through my experience and my play, is the damage is probably some of the lowest that I've played with any of the tanks at 60. It is regularly underperforming in DPS, which can sometimes affect your threat generation. So just something to pay attention to. Aside from that, it's not like abysmally low where it's terrible. It's not at all. Then there are times where your DPS can absolutely spike up and be really, really, really good. I just find as a whole, the overall is a little bit low. I honestly wish that they would kind of give it maybe like a 3% aura buff or something like that. It doesn't need to be much to make it go up. And I understand why they won't because of Death Striking. If you buff or Death Strike too much, BDK will just become kind of gods among all tanks. So there is a balance there to be found, and I think they're going to find it, and it works really, really well. So as you're playing through BDK, you're going in a dungeon. One of your big things that you need to upkeep is your bone shields, which is primarily through uses of marrow rend. And you're going to want to keep about 5 stacks. You don't need more, but you don't want less, because what's going to happen there is when you get 5 stacks of bone shield, your Death Strike is going to cost less runic power. When your Death Strike costs less runic power, you get to heal yourself more. It just all works really, really well. So when you're maintaining your BDK going through a dungeon, you need to make sure that you are staying above 5 stacks of bone shield at all time. That is going to be a pretty big priority for you. Although if you're come to the decision on, I have four stacks of bone shield, but I'm about to die if I don't Death Strike right now, Death Strike right now. So that's just some of the things that you kind of have to think about and go through. It is a very fun class to play, and we're going to go through the talents next. Talents for the BDK. Now, on your first row, you have Heartbreaker and Blood Drinker, which are going to be your 2 main ones, depending on your type of content. Heartbreaker is for anything AoE, Mythic Plus, anything like that, because Heart Strike will generate more additional runic power per target hit. When you have your Death and Decay on the ground, your Heartbreaker will hit up to your Heart Strike will hit up to 5 enemies, increasing all of that runic power and increasing your general survivability. In raid scenarios or single target scenarios, Blood Drinker is the way to go. It absolutely is. It adds an extra button on your bar, which drains health from your target over an amount of seconds, but you can still use all of your defensives, and you can parry and dodge while you are channeling the ability. It is a solid ability to have and use. On your second row, Hemostasis. Each enemy hit with Blood Boil increases the damage and healing done of your next Death Strike by 8%, stacking up to 5 times. This is absolutely the go-to. Set it and forget it, and just work with it there. You're on your 30 row. If you are just starting out with Blood, use Relish in Blood. So while Crimson Scourge is active, your next Death and Decay will heal you for X amount of health per Bone Shield charge, and you immediately gain 10 runic power. This is the better option for while you're learning how to play it and while you're on your way to kind of mastering the class. Once you get to a certain point, though, Blood Tap is going to come and be the all-around better option. But it comes with a little bit of a caveat. You need to know when to use Blood Tap. And I personally learned to use Blood Tap by not having it. Because there are certain times where you could be like, I could use a rune right now. That's not the time to use Blood Tap. I need to use a rune right now to Heart Strike to get enough runic power to Death Strike within the next 1.5 seconds, or I am going to die. That is the time to use Blood Tap, and it does happen more frequently than what you'd think, especially while you're kind of on your way to knowing whether or not you're in trouble. Because you can be at 40% health and full runic power and you're not in trouble. But if you can be at full HP with no runic power and be in more trouble than that. So it's just something to kind of keep in mind. But Relish in Blood is a fantastic option if you're using that. Blood Tap is the go-to once you really know how to play the spec well, and those moments of I need this rune immediately. Will of the Necropolis is your basic go-to for most of the time. So damage taken below 30% health is reduced by 30%. This is not on a cooldown. This is not triggered once every 30 seconds, once a minute. This is on all of the time, and your health will hit 30% more times than what you may like or think. So this is going to help you, give you enough time to Death Strike and work your way through it. Anti-Magic Barrier. This is the cooldown. This is the talent that reduces the cooldown, and and the amount absorbed. This is really good in niche scenarios, heavy magic fights where you need to negate certain magic effects in raids and things like that. There were a couple in Nyalotha, not a tremendous amount of it in Nathria. So Will of the Necropolis is kind of your general go-to, but Anti-Magic Barrier absolutely does have a place if you're playing it. On your 40 row, Grip of the Dead is your basic go-to for any Mythic Plus and will allow you to pre-prep your mobs, gain a little bit of aggro at a distance, because what I like to do is place the Death and Decay ahead of myself, directly smack dab on the mobs, and they have a 90% slow. So they're basically stuck there while I have enough time to run in and Blood Boil, and just... it already starts the threat generation before you can really get there as a tank. So that's really, really nice. Although its usefulness in raids, not so much. Wraith Walk has been my preferred raid cooldown. It increases your movement speed, which you use way more than what you think, because you're a little bit of a wheelchair. So, I prefer Wraith Walk for raids. Your 45 row. Now here you do have two options. Neither one of them are bad. Voracious. We're going to start with Voracious. Voracious is your more defensive option. So Death Strike healing is increased by 20% and grants you 15% leech for 8 seconds. This is going to really help you out defensively while you're still in the process of mastering your Death Strikes, when you need to do it, and things like that. And it is a big boon. I really, really like using Voracious. I felt much safer with it as I was learning while I was on my journey. It's a fun defensive option, and it's, if you even play it in high keys, not a problem there. If you're pushing keys, Voracious might actually be your better option. Bloodworms is a great healing utility, but as well it is a better DPS option, because the Bloodworms do actually do damage to your target. So if you're looking for a DPS boost while still remaining defensive, Bloodworms is a fantastic option. If you're looking purely defensive, Voracious is the way to go. On the 50 row, Bone Storm does have a place if you like to use it. 1 minute cooldown, deals a lot of AoE damage, although I personally don't like it as much as I originally did. Red Thirst has been just insanely fun all around. Reduces the cooldown on Vampiric Blood by 1.5 seconds per 10 runic power spent. Well, Death Strike is 40 runic power when you have 5 stacks of Bone Shield. So that's immediately getting it reduced down to, like, what, 6 seconds per? You can easily get this. So it's a 1.5 minute cooldown right off the bat for Vampiric Blood, which is one of your main defensives. Increases all healing and increases your maximum health. You can easily get this down to 45 seconds if you're death striking constantly, knowing when to death strike, and when you're kind of playing your rotation right, you'll easily get this down from anywhere to 45 seconds to a minute, which means at higher keys you'll easily have it for once a pack. It's really, really nice, and I think Red Thirst is just kind of your set it and forget it. Purgatory is a cheat death, although honestly, I just, once every 4 minutes is not enough for me. When you can get a Red Thirst every 45 seconds to a minute, you wouldn't even need the cheat death. Personal opinions, but you can play what you want here, but I think Red Thirst is the safest option. Up next is Covenant Choice. You do have a couple of options to work with BDK. Kyrian is better for raiding, given how it's set up. Venthyr is really good in Mythic Plus, and the Necrolords are a nice balance between the two. I personally went with Necrolords because I prefer their aesthetic over anything else, but I started out as Venthyr before, when I had another class in the Necrolords, because personally Necrolords to me are my favorite. My favorite Covenant is simply based on aesthetic and design. Personal choice, that's the way I prefer it, so I absolutely want one in, and Abomination Limb is tons and tons of fun. It is still good as a tank to be able to use, and in fact it can be used in a lot of weird ways, which can be a lot of fun, but it also helps with pack placement. So Venthyr Swarming Mist is actually the better option for Mythic Plus. Kyrian is the best option for raiding, and I find Necrolords to be the nice balance in between. For Blood, Night Fae is a little clunky When I used it, I really didn't like it that much, and I found that it was very difficult to make work right and in my favor as much as I wanted to. So that's kind of your Covenant choices. Pick which one you want best. At the end of the day, if you want to play Night Fae, who gives a crap? Play what you want, make it work, it don't matter. For stats, what you're going to want is you're going to want to prioritize item level first at all times, and then once you get to a certain point of sideways upgrades, try and stick with haste verse. Right now, with the way the Shadowlands is set up, item level is absolutely king. If you have a choice between a 220 weapon with crit mastery or a 210 with haste versed, take the 220 with crit mastery. This is how much item level matters right now over everything else. Aside from that, haste versa your next and crit mastery afterwards, and then you can go ahead and work from there. For your opener, I like to open up with a Death and Decay on the pack in front of me as I'm walking up to it, and with the 90% slow, Blood Boil, then get your Marrow Rends going so you can get some stacks of Bone Shield, pepper in some Heart Strikes, and by then you should have enough runic power for a Death Strike. But if you're not taking enough damage, save the Death Strike right off the bat, Blood Boil, get a few more stacks of that Bone Shield because some might have depleted, and then you can start basically working in your Death Strikes into everything else. If the pack is going to be troublesome for you and you know it right off the bat, so that first pack in the other side is a great example of this. I would rune tap first and go in and pull it in. There are certain points to use your Covenant ability, so I know for Venthyr and Necrolord, pop it at the start of the pack and really kind of start getting all of that work in. Then Venthyr, you'll get all of that runic regeneration when Swarming Mist is done. Abomination Limb will help you set the pack to where you want it and keep things in place. So there are different options when you can work there, and it kind of all really depends on what Covenant you're with. So work with your Covenant ability inside your rotation itself, but your main things that you want to be doing is Marrow Rending, Blood Boiling. Death and Decay is something that I like to do, and I don't do it on every pack, but there are certain packs that like to charge away, do this and that, and be weird. That's one I like to use a Death and Decay on, or a big pack that I just want to stay put. Like, that's where I'm tanking it. I don't want you guys moving. I'll Death and Decay and do that. Aside from that, walking in with a Blood Boil, Heart Strike, and start getting all of that going is how the way it works there. When it comes to Legendaries, I personally prefer Crimson Rune Weapon for my Mythic Plus content. It is a decent raid option, but it is best used in Mythic Plus scenarios where you're constantly going, and this can affect your opener as well. So Dancing Rune Weapons now generates 5 Bone Shield charges. So you don't even have to Marrow Rend going into a pack. You literally go in, you can start your opener, Dancing Rune Weapon, and you're right into Heart Striking, and you have everything done, and then it increases your runic regeneration by 40% for 10 seconds after Dancing Rune Weapon has faded. So it is an all-around great Mythic Plus legendary. If you are looking at something both great in raids and good in Mythic Plus, Super Strain is your option. It equips Frost Fever, Blood Plague, and Virulent Plague. Whichever one you have, depending on Frost and Holy Blood, it is what your general Death Knight legendary. It will equip the other two at a reduced effectiveness. This overall will actually end up giving you more runic power than, let's say, Crimson Rune Weapon. What happens is you're not necessarily getting that runic power whenever you need it, because Frost Fever does give you a runic power regen. It just gives you a higher overall, but not necessarily more runic power when you absolutely need it, versus Crimson Rune Weapon that can do that. So Super Strain would be your best all around if you're just looking at making one for all content. Super Strain is a great option, but if you are looking at a better Mythic Plus option, Crimson Rune Weapon would be your way to go there for Legendaries. And lastly, I do want to cover a couple of conduits that I really, really like. I'm not going to go over every single one. I could just be here all day. If you guys want, leave it in the comment section below. I'll leave... I could do an entire Soul Conduit breakdown for BDK if you guys would like. Aside from that, we'll cover the few ones that I think are necessary or really, really fun to put on. If you're looking at potency conduits, your Covenant one for Kyrian, Venthyr, and Necrolords are actually pretty good. Night Fate, I have no idea. So if you're looking at potency, there's a very, very good chance that your Covenant ones are probably going to be your best ones, depending on your play style. And in fact, Blood has a few endurance and finesse conduits that are almost secretly potency conduits in disguise. For example, Meat Shield is one that I will absolutely put on, especially with Crimson Rune Weapon. So it increases the duration of Dancing Rune Weapon by 3 seconds while active. Your parries increase your maximum health, stacking up to 2 times. This is actually a secret DPS conduit in disguise as endurance, because your Dancing Rune Weapon is definitely a DPS boost to you as well as a defensive boost, but it is a DPS boost. So this one here is twofold. Very, very good to have. I really enjoy it. Spirit Drain is just all around great. Whenever you use your Mind Freeze, your kick, it grants you 14 runic power. If you are going through M+, you are kicking as many things as you can, and you're going to get a lot of runic power use out of this. This is just a fantastic option to have. Now, given what I'm running, I do end up with a lot of endurance conduits because that's kind of the way it works. Hardened Bones, Lichborn. While Lichborn is active, you gain a damage reduction. Just all around nice to have. And anti-magic zones, so Reinforced Shell, it increases anti-magic zones radius and duration. So this is really, really nice for Mythic Plus, raids, all scenarios. Fantastic option to have. I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoy it. And lastly, one of the other ones that I do like, if I could get another potency conduit, or at least one, would be Withering Plague. Heart Strikes deals increased damage to enemies affected by Blood Plague. Everything's being affected by Blood Plague because you're opening with Blood Boil. So those are kind of your go-tos. Try and get those ones in wherever you can and work from there. I know we're going to get more Soulbind extensions in 9.1. I'm really excited for that, and I think BDK is going to actually have their stocks rise with being able to use more Soul Conduits. So we're going to see how that works for them and how it goes there. I stream on Twitch well, right now I think we're actually going to be swapping to Wednesdays and Thursdays as well as Saturdays. So come on by, check that out. Descriptions in the doobly-doo below. I will be updating the schedule. I am working on a Venthyr tank, Venthyr Bear tank to be exact. So I will be doing a Venthyr Bear video on that and its pros and cons and everything like that. I've just been having a lot of fun with it, so do expect that one coming up, as well as I am still writing up the final script for a tank anxiety video and how to overcome it, how I overcame it, and how to work it there. So please like, comment, subscribe, all the good things. Let's all be nice. Tanks right now are in very, very short supply, so if you are thinking about becoming a tank and you don't want to play the exact meta class because it's not for you, play whichever spec you like and work with it there. If it's BDK, awesome. Warrior, great. Bear, Monk, Paladin, whatever you want to play, have fun and work with it there. So, aside from that, I hope you guys are enjoying Shadowlands as much as I am.